Imagine waking up tomorrow and never feeling pain again. Not just the chronic stuff, not just the headaches and the backaches and the dull throb in your knee when it rains. All of it. Gone. Every stubbed toe, every paper cut, every cramp, every sting, every burn. You step out of bed and your body feels like silk. Nothing aches, nothing pulls, nothing stings. For the first time in your life, you exist in a body that only sends you good news. You'd probably cry with relief. Most people, if you offered them this, would take it without hesitating. Pain is the most universally hated experience a human body can produce. We spend billions of dollars a year trying to make it stop. We invented aspirin. We invented morphine. We invented fentanyl. We built entire medical specialties around the single goal of making pain go away. So a world without it should be paradise. Every human on Earth, all 8 billion of us, waking up tomorrow in bodies that feel everything except the one thing we all despise. Pressure, temperature, texture, vibration, all still there. Just no pain. No sharp, no burn, no ache, no sting. You would celebrate. Everyone would celebrate. And for about 72 hours, that celebration would feel completely justified. The first morning is euphoric. Social media floods with people posting about their new reality. Someone with chronic lower back pain stands up straight for the first time in 11 years. A woman with fibromyalgia goes for a run. A kid with sickle cell disease plays outside all day, laughing, tireless, because the crises that used to leave him screaming in the ER have stopped registering. The world feels like it shed a skin. People move differently. Looser, more willing, more reckless, but that word doesn't occur to anyone yet. Gyms fill up. Weekend athletes who haven't jogged in years are suddenly sprinting. A guy with a torn rotator cuff he's been babying for 6 months throws a football as hard as he can, because why not? It doesn't hurt anymore. A woman with a stress fracture in her foot goes hiking. A teenager with a swollen knee from basketball practice plays a full game, then another. Then another. The absence of pain feels like permission. Permission to use your body the way you always wanted to, without the tax. That first night, something small happens that nobody thinks about. People sleep more deeply. Without the micro adjustments your body makes during the night, the ones triggered by pressure pain when you've been lying on one side too long, people stay in the same position for hours. Normally, discomfort is what makes you roll over. It's not conscious, you're asleep, but tiny pain signals from compressed tissue prompt you to shift, redistributing your weight, restoring blood flow. Without those signals, a person sleeps like a stone, 8 hours in the same position. By morning, a faint red mark has developed on the hip or shoulder that bore the weight all night. Nobody notices it. It doesn't hurt. Day 2. A chef slicing onions cuts deeply into his index finger. He sees the blood before he feels anything, because he doesn't feel anything. He wraps it, keeps cooking. The cut is deeper than he realizes, into the tendon sheath, but the only feedback he has is visual. If he can't see it, it isn't happening. Across the world, similar scenes play out. A construction worker steps on a nail and doesn't break stride. A child grabs a pot handle that just came off the stove and holds on for 4 full seconds. Because the signal that should have made her let go in 1/4 of a second was never sent. She puts the handle down when she smells something unfamiliar. It's her own skin. But that's not the worst part. By the end of the first week, emergency rooms start seeing a pattern. Patients arriving with injuries far more advanced than they should be. A man comes in with a broken wrist so swollen it looks like a grapefruit. He broke it 3 days ago reaching for something on a high shelf. Heard a crack, felt pressure, kept going. He's been using that hand to drive, to cook, to type. The bone fragments have shifted. What would have been a clean fracture requiring a cast is now a surgical case requiring pins. A woman arrives with second-degree burns across her forearm. She leaned against a radiator while reading and didn't move for 20 minutes. Normally, the first half second of contact with a surface that hot triggers an involuntary withdrawal reflex. The fastest reflex arc in the human body, routed through the spinal cord, not even reaching the brain. That reflex is gone. Without pain, there's no signal, no withdrawal, no protection. She only noticed when she looked down and saw the blistering. Dentists report the shift within 10 days. Patients coming in for routine cleanings reveal mouths full of damage, cavities that have been growing without any signal, cracked teeth from nighttime grinding that used to wake people up but now doesn't. A teenager with a molar abscess so advanced the infection has eaten into the jawbone. He had no idea. No toothache, no sensitivity, no throbbing, nothing. The infection was quietly spreading for weeks, possibly months if the pain had already been intermittent before, and now with zero feedback, it progressed unchecked. Dentists start recommending monthly checkups instead of biannual ones, but it won't be enough. But that's not the worst part. Inside the body, pain functions as the primary alarm system for organ damage. Appendicitis starts with a dull ache in the lower right abdomen. That ache is the reason people go to the emergency room. It's the reason surgeons catch it before the appendix ruptures. Without that ache, a swollen appendix proceeds silently through inflammation, distension, necrosis, and perforation. The first sign of appendicitis in a painless world is peritonitis, the spilling of bacterial contents into the abdominal cavity. By the time someone notices they feel vaguely unwell, feverish maybe, nauseated, the infection is systemic. What was a routine surgery with a 99% survival rate becomes an emergency sepsis case with significantly worse odds. Hospitals start seeing ruptured appendices at rates that haven't been recorded since before the invention of modern surgery. Heart attacks become invisible. Normally, a myocardial infarction announces itself. Crushing chest pressure, radiating pain down the left arm, jaw pain. These signals are what send people to the hospital in time for intervention. Even before the painless world, about 1 in 5 heart attacks were already, quote, zero quote, producing no noticeable symptoms. And those were responsible for a disproportionate share of cardiac deaths because they went untreated. Now, every heart attack is silent. A 54-year-old man having an anterior wall infarction feels nothing. No pressure, no tightness, no shooting pain. He keeps mowing the lawn. The damaged heart muscle dies. If the infarction is large enough, he goes into arrhythmia and collapses 20 minutes later. If it's smaller, he survives, but with permanent heart damage he doesn't know about until the next one, which he also won't feel. Kidney stones pass without the legendary agony, which sounds like a gift, until you realize the agony is what drives people to seek imaging that reveals the stone. Without pain, a kidney stone that partially obstructs the ureter causes a silent backup of urine. Hydronephrosis. The kidney swells. If the obstruction persists, the kidney sustains irreversible damage over days. The patient feels fine. Their kidney is dying. There's a doctor who understood all of this long before any hypothetical disappearance. Paul Brand spent decades working with leprosy patients in India and Louisiana. Leprosy doesn't rot flesh. That's the myth. What leprosy does is destroy peripheral nerve endings. It takes away pain. And Brand watched what happened to people who lived without it. His patients burned their hands cooking and didn't flinch. They walked on broken feet until the bones ground into dust. Rats gnawed on their fingers while they slept, and they didn't wake up. Brand wrote about one patient who reached into a charcoal fire to retrieve a dropped sweet potato. Brand could smell the burning tissue. The patient could not feel it. He pulled the potato out and bit into it. Brand later wrote that pain is the gift nobody wants. He spent his career trying to convince the world that the sensation every human being desperately wants to eliminate is the one thing holding the body together. But that's not the worst part. A condition called CIPA, congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis, affects roughly 1 in 125 million people. Children born with it cannot feel pain and cannot sweat. The stories from their families are almost impossible to read. A child bites through her own tongue during teething because there's no signal telling her to stop. She bites through her lips. She scratches her corneas because rubbing her eyes too hard produces no warning. She fractures a leg on the playground and keeps running. The fracture heals wrong. She fractures it again. Her joints degrade because the micro damage that accumulates during normal movement, damage that pain would cause a healthy child to compensate for, just accumulates. By her teenage years, she has Charcot joints, a condition where the joint literally disintegrates from repeated, undetected injury. Her ankles, her knees, destroyed not by a single catastrophic event, but by thousands of tiny ones that nobody felt. Most people with CIPA do not reach old age. They die from infections that started as unnoticed wounds, from fevers their bodies couldn't regulate because they also can't sweat, from accumulated organ damage that was never flagged by a sensation they never had. Every human on Earth is now living with acquired CIPA. Not the sweating part, just the pain part. But the pain part was the thing keeping most of us alive. 3 months in, the medical system has restructured around a single principle. If you can't rely on patients to report symptoms, you have to find the symptoms yourself. Hospitals push for monthly full-body imaging. MRIs, CT scans, ultrasounds, blood panels, everything. The goal is to catch what pain used to catch: an inflamed appendix, a cracked rib, a kidney stone, a tumor pressing on a nerve that would have produced screaming agony and an immediate trip to the ER, but now produces nothing. The problem is infrastructure. There are roughly 40,000 MRI machines on the planet. There are 8 billion people. Even running every machine around the clock, you cannot screen the global population with any meaningful frequency. The math doesn't work. Pain was doing the work of billions of dollars of diagnostic equipment, 24 hours a day, for free, in every human body on the planet. No system can replace that. Athletes are falling apart. Professional sports leagues try to implement mandatory rest periods and biometric monitoring, but the damage is already compounding. A football player with a stress fracture in his tibia keeps training because he doesn't feel it. The fracture propagates. Mid-game, the bone fails completely. A runner with Achilles tendonitis, which would normally sideline her with sharp pain at every step, runs a marathon. The tendon ruptures at mile 19. A gymnast with a compressed disc in her spine keeps training full routines. One landing compresses the disc further into the spinal canal. She loses feeling in her legs. That one she notices. But that's not the worst part. Pain pathways in the nervous system are tangled with other sensory channels in ways that become obvious only once they're gone. Itch, for instance. The sensation of itch is modulated by pain. When you scratch an itch, the mild pain from scratching actually suppresses the itch signal. Without pain, that suppression disappears. Itches become unanswerable. You scratch, and the itch doesn't diminish. People begin scratching through their own skin. A woman in one documented CIPA case scratched through her scalp to the skull during sleep. Without pain to stop the scratching reflex, the body has no off switch. Temperature regulation shifts. Pain is part of how your body tells you that an environment is dangerous. Frostbite begins with pain. Heat stroke begins with pain. Without those signals, people stay in dangerous thermal environments far too long. A jogger runs in 38-degree heat and doesn't feel the warning signs that precede heat exhaustion. His core temperature climbs past 40 degrees. Organ damage begins. A construction worker in a Minnesota winter doesn't feel his fingers going numb because numbness was the first stage of a pain cascade that's been deleted. He works a full shift. By the time he pulls off his gloves, the tissue in 3 fingers is dead. Childbirth changes in ways that no one anticipated. Labor pain is not just suffering, it's information. The intensity and location of contractions tell the body and the medical team how labor is progressing. Pain drives the urge to push. Pain signals when something is wrong, when a baby is positioned dangerously, when a uterus is rupturing, when delivery is imminent. Without pain, laboring women don't feel contractions. They don't know when to push. They don't know when something has gone wrong. Fetal monitoring equipment catches some of these problems, but many deliveries worldwide happen outside hospitals, without continuous monitoring. Maternal and infant mortality rates climb in regions where pain was the primary diagnostic tool during birth. The emotional dimension surfaces slowly, and people resist it even more than the physical consequences. Social rejection activates many of the same neural pathways as physical pain. The sting of being excluded, the ache of a broken relationship, the sharp hurt of betrayal. These aren't metaphors. The brain processes social pain through overlapping circuits with physical pain, including the anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. Studies have shown that acetaminophen, a pain reliever, actually reduces the intensity of social pain. So when physical pain disappears, social pain dims with it. That sounds merciful. It isn't. The pain of rejection is what keeps social groups together. It's the enforcement mechanism for cooperation. You don't betray your friends partly because the emotional consequence of losing them would hurt. Reduce that consequence, and the math of social behavior changes. People become less careful with each other. Not cruel, just careless. The cost of damaging a relationship has dropped. Marriages that would have been fought for are abandoned more easily. Friendships that would have been repaired are let go. The texture of human bonding thins because the penalty for neglecting it has been muted. 6 months out, the world has adapted. Partially. Wearable sensors are selling faster than any consumer device in history. Patches that monitor skin temperature, blood pressure, heart rhythm, blood oxygen, joint stress. They vibrate when they detect something abnormal, substituting a mechanical buzz for the alarm that biology used to provide. But they're crude replacements. They can tell you your heart rate is irregular. They can't tell you that the specific quality of irregularity feels like a clenching fist behind your sternum, the kind of rich, dimensional information pain provided. Pain wasn't just an alarm. It was a high-resolution, real-time, spatially precise map of everything going wrong inside you. A buzzing wristband is a smoke detector. Pain was a firefighter who already knew where the fire was, how hot it was, and whether it was spreading. The pharmaceutical industry undergoes a strange inversion. For decades, the goal was suppressing pain. Now the goal is restoring it. Billions of research dollars pour into finding ways to reactivate nociceptors, the specialized nerve endings that detect tissue damage and generate pain signals. But reactivating a system the body has stopped producing is different from blocking one that's overactive. Nobody has ever had to re-engineer pain from the outside. The nociceptors are still there, physically present in the skin and organs. They just stopped sending signals. Restoring them would require understanding exactly how pain signals are generated at the molecular level, and then artificially triggering that cascade, which means essentially reinventing one of the most complex signaling systems in biology. What nobody says out loud, but everyone starts to feel in some muted way, is that the world before was better. Not more comfortable. Pain was never comfortable, but more survivable. Pain was the oldest technology the body ever developed. 400 million years of evolution refined it. Even primitive fish have nociceptors. The system predates the immune system, predates complex vision, predates the brain structures that let you feel emotions about pain. It is one of the first things multicellular life figured out. If something is damaging you, you need to know, and you need to know now, and you need to know in a way that you cannot ignore. That last part is the key. You cannot ignore pain. That's the entire point. You can ignore a warning light. You can dismiss a notification. You can skip a checkup. You can mute an alarm. But you cannot ignore a kidney stone. You cannot power through a ruptured appendix. You cannot pretend a heart attack isn't happening when your chest feels like a car is parked on it. Pain grabs your attention and does not give it back until you deal with the problem. Every other warning system in nature can be overridden, tuned out, disabled. Pain cannot. It was designed by 400 million years of natural selection to be the one signal the organism cannot learn to ignore. A year out, the statistics are coming in. Mortality from preventable internal conditions has risen sharply worldwide. Cardiac deaths, ruptured organs, sepsis from untreated infections, joint replacements in people under 30, dental surgeries that have become major maxillofacial operations because infections reached the bone unchecked, burn injuries that went deep because the withdrawal reflex never fired. The total number of years of healthy life lost to the disappearance of pain is still being calculated, and the number is staggering, and it keeps growing, because pain wasn't a one-time warning, it was continuous monitoring. Every second of every day, pain was running diagnostics on your entire body and reporting back in real time. The only reason you didn't notice how much work it was doing is the same reason you don't notice the foundation of a building. You only think about it when it's gone. There's an image that captures it. A man standing barefoot on broken glass, looking at his phone, completely unaware, blood pooling around his feet. Not a lot, just enough. He'll keep standing there until he looks down or someone tells him. Maybe he'll step off and track bloody footprints through his kitchen without feeling any of the shards still embedded in his soles. He'll go to bed. The cuts will get infected. He'll develop cellulitis, then sepsis. Then he'll wind up in a hospital bed wondering how a handful of broken glass nearly killed him. And the answer is that it shouldn't have. Any of it. One sharp sting in his heel and he'd have looked down, stepped away, pulled the glass out, cleaned the cuts, and gone on with his evening. A half-second of discomfort would have saved him weeks in the ICU. But that half-second doesn't exist anymore. The signal that kept him alive every day of his life for 37 years just stopped, and he celebrated when it happened. We all did.